Hi, welcome to another in the series of St. Francis tube videos. Today I'm going to be talking just very briefly about the Labyrinth, or what is that maze-like thing in between the gift shop and the Great Hall. Hi, welcome to another in the series of St. Francis tube videos discerning spiritual practices, things that may help your prayer life. Today's topic, the Labyrinth, or what is that maze-like thing in between the gift shop and the Great Hall. Labyrinths are an unusual treasure that not very many churches have. While we may not be gathered all together on Sunday mornings, there are still times and places to pray in new and unexpected ways, places that may really touch a spot within your soul. Let's look at this treasure that we have. And before we get too deep into it, I want to mention a couple websites that will go into much greater detail than I'm going to go today. The first is labyrinthlocator.com. This site simply is a listing of places where labyrinths can be found across the globe. You may be interested to know that St. Francis is listed on this website, and anyone in this part of Texas who's looking for a labyrinth and goes to this site will find us. This is kind of the central clearinghouse of locations. Verywellfit.com is, for the most part, a fairly secular site, but talks about the benefits of walking a labyrinth for one's spiritual and mental health. I remember a few years ago out at Texas Tech, as the Office of Student Life was trying to prepare students for final exams, knowing what stress they were under, the Office of Student Life put a labyrinth out in the middle of campus with very little explanation or instruction. Just, if you're feeling stressed, come walk these paths. It was a wild success. The Emporia Church of Christ, emporiaseaofchrist.org, will take you to a local congregation's website, and you may have to look for their labyrinth explanation, but they give a wonderful, detailed explanation of the labyrinth and how to use it in prayer. Last but not least, let me recommend the Labyrinth Society, labyrinthsociety.org. I'll be repeating these websites again at the end of our video today, but the Labyrinth Society is a kind of general clearinghouse for information, practices, comments, examples. If you want to learn a whole lot more about labyrinths than this short little video gives you, here's a great place to start. Labyrinths are often compared to mazes, but the two are actually quite different. In the upper right corner, you see a traditional sort of maze. One enters at the upper left or at the lower right, and as you go into the maze, are confronted by decision-making points. Do I turn left or do I turn right? Some of the left-hand turns will be dead ends. Some of the right-hand turns may be dead ends. You have to kind of figure your way through the whole maze in order to get to the end. As opposed to a more traditional labyrinth in the bottom right-hand corner, in which there is only one path. There are no dead ends. One path in, one path out. Our labyrinth here at St. Francis follows the general pattern you see on the left. This is based on the Great Labyrinth at Chartres Cathedral in France. sometimes called a rose labyrinth because it's resemblance to flowers and petals. You'll notice that there's one way in, coming into a center that looks a little bit like a flower in bloom. And then if you want to get back out, you have to retrace the same steps that took you in. Several years ago, when my son was very young, we built a labyrinth at the church camp for our diocese. And not too long after it was built, he and I found ourselves at the camp, and he asked me, "Dad, what's this all about?" And I said, "Well, why don't you just walk with me? We'll walk through it together, and at the end, I'll see if you figured it out." We walked into the labyrinth, following the pathway, got to the center, stayed for a little bit, and then walked out. And I said, "What did you learn?" It's amazing what a 4-year-old could tell me. He said, for example, one lesson he learned from the labyrinth was to follow your path. Another lesson was it's always nicer to walk together. We're always closer than it may appear sometimes. Also, he added, sometimes it looked as if we were really close to our goal, but we still had a long ways to go. Just as he trusted me to guide him through the labyrinth, so he said he learned that he should trust God to help move us through our journey. In the center of our journey is the very thing that draws us forward. We had a steel cross about 9 or 12 feet tall planted in the middle of our labyrinth at that point. But the whole journey revolved around being drawn forward deeper and deeper into the mystery of Christ. Finally, he said, "Coming or going, we are all on different parts of the same journey." So maybe it's time to try the labyrinth again, or if you've never walked the labyrinth, to try it for the first time. A few more little things I'd like to pass along. When walking the labyrinth, there is no leadership needed. You can simply walk in, follow the path. You don't need a priest, a deacon, an intermediary. Just do it yourself. Some folks are not reading learners. My son is dyslexic, and so reading books when he was younger was a real challenge. Other people I know just don't get it if they read it. They need to move it, to walk it. In the kinetic exercise of using their muscles, their legs, their whole body, they learn in a different way. The labyrinth is about kinetic learning, which may bypass the brain and go directly to the whole person. One of the beauties of our outdoor labyrinth is that it's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You don't need anyone to come unlock the church for you. You can walk it before coming to church, upon leaving a church service. You can walk it in the middle of the day, after a long walk in the evening. You might be surprised how many folks who are jogging up and down Stratford or Hickory will make St. Francis campus a rest stop where they'll come off their jogging, walk over to the labyrinth, take a few moments to collect themselves in prayer and meditation, and then return to the jogging. Finally, I want to reassure everyone that this is not really New Age stuff, made up or just full of fluid. While I fully recognize that using a labyrinth for one's prayer life doesn't appeal to everyone, I can tell you that labyrinths are an ancient Christian practice, made much more relevant today when we're not able to gather in the church all at once, but rather we might be able to find our way forward as we find our way to the center, which is calling us there. Remember now, those resources, I couldn't think of the word there for a minute, those resources that I had asked you about or pointed out to you earlier, labyrinthsociety.org, emporiaseaofchrist.org, Labyrinth Locator. These websites will go into far greater depth than I can give today. But what I can recommend is that walking the labyrinth anytime, day or night, is a spiritual exercise that is bound to draw some reward and be worth your time.